Hey folks, this is Vint with Ads Gaming Addiction, and the video that you're about to watch was hosted by Nicholas Bentley over at Underdog Games. They hosted a Q&A for the advisors. I'm also an advisor on this panel, I guess. And we kind of went over, the new stuff coming down the pipeline, the older games that have already been published. For those of you that don't know, Underdog Games was the creator behind Trekking Through History. Some people call it Trekking Through Time because that's kind of what it is. Trekking the World, Trekking the National Parks, those very family-friendly games that most of us know. I've seen many of them in Barnes & Noble and in different places like that. Well, anyway, the video that you're about to watch is an hour-long session where we discuss games coming up, which I'm really excited for, so that's cool. But it did cut out toward the end there, so it kind of cuts off rather abruptly, but it does go over mostly everything that we needed to know. So without further ado, on with the show.
Ah, Charlie says I'm looking good. I don't know if that's true, but I appreciate it, Charlie. As you guys can see, I'm a cave troll that lives in a basement. Where am I from? Matthew asks. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. How about, yeah, interesting. How many people do we have in here? 11 people watching. That's good. Denver. Sweet. How's the weather in Denver? Yes. it. Jeremy asks if it's my basement. Yes, it is. The rest of the house belongs to my wife and my son. This is my place. Okay, so I have a question. Does anybody know if it's possible to add other people to video on here or not? Because it would be cool to get some of my colleagues on video as well here, but we might need Oh, uh well my son Charlie asked what did my son draw on the whiteboard? I drew stick figures and my son who enjoys murdering everything I make erased them. He like takes the eraser and he cuts off their arms. Oh, Jacqueline says there's ways to do multiple videos in here. Is that right, Jacqueline? I'm looking, but I don't see it. Oh, cool. Okay, so there is some way to do it. I just got to figure it out. Okay. Yeah, Jacqueline, do you know do you know where we could look to add the video? Sorry. Apologies ahead of time. This is our first time doing this, so we're gonna be struggling a little bit to get all the tech right. Oh, you suggest going to Google instead of uh okay, how do I add someone to my live feed? This feature isn't available on computers, but it is available on Android and iPhone. And here I am on my computer. So, yeah, yeah. Interesting. I could try switching to my phone, maybe, although my phone has sound problems. I wouldn't trust my phone to do this. Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah. Next time we could do a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet. Yeah, that's possible. Okay, so since it appears that I'm going to be the only person on video for this, I'll just talk a little bit, sort of give an overview of what we can talk about, and then you guys can all ask questions in the comments, and I can answer as well as I can. Uh, we'll see what happens. Okay, so you may or may not have seen that we sent an email today that sort of covered all the things that we're doing right now at Underdog, and it's a lot of things. So I'll just review a couple of the things that you might have questions about. So one, as you're probably already tired of, we're making Trekking the World Second Edition. We don't know if it should actually be called Second Edition because it's a complete redesign of the game for reasons that we can get into. But at least for now, it's codenamed Second Edition. That game is mostly done. You've seen we're working on the cover art, and we're working on the production design right now. Other things that we have going on are, let's see here. I want to make sure I get this right. Here we go. So we're also working on a solo mode for Trekking the World Second Edition. The first solo mode that we ever made, we put into Trekking Through History, and it has been received really well. So we're going to try to put solo modes in everything now. So we're working on them for everything. We're also working on a solo mode for Trekking the National Parks. It's something people have been asking for a really long time. And Charlie Bink, who is here in the chat, has been working on that. And another thing Charlie has just started working on is an expansion for Trekking the National Parks. And that's a big deal for us because Trekking the National Parks is by far our best-selling game, and a lot of people have been asking for an expansion for a really long time. Those are all like trekking things that you're hearing about, but we also have non-trekking games that we're working on. We just started working on a game called Wildlife Photographer, where you in the game are a wildlife photographer trying to capture great photographs. We think there will be real photographs in the game, and we think it will be a National Geographic game. Because we have a license to make National Geographic games, and so far we've only made one. That one that we've made is called Secret Clue Animals, and we're actually going to make another one of those called Secret Clue Cuisines. That's like a really light, cooperative deduction game that you can play with young kids. And so we're sort of in the production phase of that. We've figured out all the different foods that are going to go in there. And so now we're working on that. That sort of covers all the things we're working on. If you saw the newsletter today, you saw links to blog posts and other things like that. So that sort of covers the main stuff we're working on. So now I'm gonna I'm gonna answer some questions here. So let's see here. We have Deb Slaughter. Hey Deb, I recognize you from all your suggestions in the advisory group. Thank you. You ask, I would love to have the expansion for Trekking the National Parks for Gen Con. Charlie Bink. Are we going to have it in time for that? I'm not sure we will. Probably won't. Charlie can tell us. But given that we just started working on it, I think I would be surprised if it were ready for Gen Con. Yeah, Charlie says probably not. These things take, at least take us a long time, unfortunately. Okay, so Julie LaFoon Jackson, hey Julie, asks, are you going to do a second edition for Trekking the National Parks? It would be nice to have the U.S. map not so squished looking. Yeah, we're the current edition is actually already a second edition. The first edition is a long time ago, really old. So actually now we're working on the third edition, and the map is different. We're aware of how funky the map looks for Trekking the National Parks, and this map, in my opinion, looks better. I think it still looks a little squished. It's hard not to have some squishing given the other constraints on the design, but all the feedback we've gotten about it suggests that it's a nicer map. And Charlie says, embrace the squish. So there you go. Let's see here. Jeremy Brooks says, I demoed Trekking Through History at his friendly local game store, partnering with Envoy. Yeah, we're working with Envoy. I was very impressed with how you offered 6 free retail copies to friendly local game stores who didn't already have it on their shelves. Yeah, we're, one of our sort of goals is exceed expectations when we do something, and that's one way to do it. Um, Jeremy asks, did that create any additional sales for the game, or was it just for exposure? I think, as far as I know, the jury is still out on if it created any additional sales. Um, but like in general, I mean, it seems like at least long term, going above and beyond for people is rarely a bad move. So I hope so. You know, we're also very proud of Trekking Through History, its mechanics in particular. We think it's sort of our high watermark for mechanics, so we want to make sure people play it. Um, yeah, especially because I think like history is not as universally loved as a subject as like national parks is. So it will really help if people play it. Yeah, cool. Oh, and okay, nice. Julie Bode? I'm not sure. I apologize. One of those is wrong. One of those is right. Which game do you think would be most accessible and interesting to play as a family with a 7-year-old who can read? Um, I think either Trekking the National Parks or Trekking Through History among our trekking games. If we're going beyond that, Secret Clue for sure. But it depends on what kind of game they like. Secret Clue is a cooperative deduction game. All of our other games are competitive strategy games, so it's like a really different vibe. I would just recommend reading the like positive and negative comments in the reviews of those games on Amazon and Board Game Geek. Um, Matthew Kreckler says, I hope it's right, Kreckler. You were super impressed with the quality of components and extras in her story. So fun to unbox. Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I really like the components of her story too. It feels good to read that. Uh, Jeremy says you definitely had to tell your attendees that they didn't need to know anything about history. Yeah. The history part was a bit of a turnoff at first. Yeah, I mean, one thing that seems true is some people associate history with like school or like a sort of like a fusty quality. And when they hear that a game is about history, I think there's also an expectation that it might be like a trivia game where it's like just going to be determined by if you know stuff or not. And the game doesn't actually communicate very well that it's not those things. It's about like getting into a time machine and flying through time. That's one reason we changed the box cover recently. We wanted to like lean into the time travel dimension of it a little bit more. One thing we've talked about is that if we could go back in time and pick a different name, we might have chosen Trekking Through Time instead of Trekking Through History, because when we watch reviews of the game, everybody calls it Trekking Through Time anyway, which makes us think we probably just misnamed it. Cool. The components and graphic design are great at attracting the non-history buff. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of praise for the production design. That is all Charlie Bink. Charlie, stand up and take a bow. You should be on video for this, because a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is just Charlie being a genius. So you suggest, so Andy Akhas-Witt suggests limiting ancestor cards to only 1 or 2 consecutive uses. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, we can take a note about that. I do notice that sometimes they all hit at the same time. Vincent Peony, I am so sorry about the names, everybody. Just an opinion. He says, just an opinion, Trekking the World 2nd Edition might fool people into thinking it's, these comments are coming so fast, they keep scrolling away from me, into thinking it's the same game or very similar. I'd come up with a new name if possible. Most X editions, in my experience, upgrade components, yeah, and change little rules, but nothing major. Healthy Heart Hospital 3rd Edition did change some rules, but it still maintained the gameplay flow and theme. Okay, yeah, so we've actually in response to the communications just today, a lot of people have said the same thing, that we shouldn't call a game which is essentially completely redesigned 2nd edition. And that's really hitting home with us. So we've had a lot of discussion today about maybe not doing that. We haven't made any final decision yet about that. And if we don't call it 2nd edition, we don't know what we're going to call it. 2 things on the table are just 2, Trekking the World 2. Another one is Redux. It seems like neither of those sound perfect to. We don't have consensus about either of those. So I don't know. It's going to be really tricky. There's also the problem that when it is not 100% clear what something is, it makes it harder to sell products on e-commerce, and we are an e-commerce company. So the reason we were motivated to call it second edition, whether that's right or wrong, is that if you have one definitive version of something, it creates fewer questions and fewer sources of confusion in people who are trying to decide what they should buy. So, yeah, I don't know. We keep sending us suggestions and criticism about that because it's really helping us think through this tricky problem. And there's a follow-up question to this from Vincent. How different will the second edition be? Anything we can share now? Yeah, so just today in the advisor group on Facebook, I posted a draft, our first draft of the production rules for Trekking the World, second edition, or whatever we're going to call it. And so you can see the rules in detail, and you see that it's almost a complete redesign. The components are very similar, but the mechanics are really different. So you can just read the rules and see for yourself, what your impressions are. And also, we're going to be doing continuing playtests on Tabletop Simulator. All right. So Julie Bodie says, "I think a lot of history games are trivia games." Yep. So I'd agree that it could be a challenge for some people who have those preconceived notions. Yeah, we see. I read every single comment on Amazon for all of our products, and there's a subset of negative comments which say, I expected a trivia game and I got a strategy game. So yeah, setting expectations well is something we probably need to do better at. Trekking the World again. That sounds really good. Take a note, Charlie. Trekking the World again. I like that one. Okay, cool. Trekking the World 2 Electric Boogaloo. See yourself out, Blaine Mather. No, yeah, probably not that one. Charlie says, one tricky thing about the naming of Trekking the World 2nd Edition is that many of the components are the same as 1st Edition. Yeah, so I should point this out. So one of the things that the game is praised a lot for is the art and the components. And we think the interface of the game is one of the best interfaces we've done, and it's colorful and the art is great, and we didn't want to throw any of that stuff away. Also, the locations themselves, so much work went into deciding which locations to feature in the game, and we chose them really carefully, and each one for a reason. So we don't want to throw those away either. So yeah, there are some things about Trekking the World that are exactly the same, but it's just the mechanics over those things are different. Julie LaFoon Jackson says, what if you changed the looks of the board as well? Then maybe you could change the name of Trekking the World without creating confusion. Yeah. I think we would want to do that, but only if we could make the board look as pleasing to as many people as the 1st edition board looks. And it seems like a lot of people. But maybe there is something we can do with, for example, the color design, so that it's obviously a different thing but still has most of the features that everyone loves about it. I don't know. I mean, and if you guys have criticisms of the production design itself and you see, it would be better if it were this way or that way, please tell us. As I hope you can tell, we're really open to being criticized. We like criticism more than we like praise, because criticism helps us get better, and praise just, feels good for 5 minutes. Okay, so let's see here. Trekking the World 2nd Voyage. I thought about something like that. I have a worry about it, which is that any title that suggests there will be new locations in the game could set up incorrect expectations. And I wonder if 2nd Voyage projects the idea that there will be new locations. I don't know. Julie LaFoon Jackson says, make the board a neoprene mat. That would be the largest neoprene mat ever, and probably It would probably raise the price of the game a lot. I think that's impossible, unfortunately. But that would be awesome. I love neoprene mats. Um, Matthew Kreckler says, I would keep it in the same trekking brand family, but make it clearly different, not simply a trekking edition, second edition. Yeah. Trekking the World, The Ultimate Journey, says Stacy Tornio. Stacy used to work here at Underdog. Hey, Stacy. Trekking the World, The Ultimate Journey. But Stacy, what if it's like not the ultimate journey? What if it's like the penultimate journey and we do another edition afterward? Then what do we do? I don't know. Jacqueline Edwards says you could do more of a topographical style board. Oh, I like that. I've noticed that that there are companies that make art pieces from topological maps. That's cool. Yeah, those can look really artful. That's an interesting thought. Trekking the World Round Trip is a suggestion from Jeremy Brooks. Round trip. That's not bad. I like that. I'm going to write all of these down after this meeting is over. This is fantastic. Matthew Kreckler says you want to be careful not to make people think it's an expansion, but a standalone game. Yep, that's another constraint. That's really important. Trekking the World, just an okay journey, says Stacy. I think that's it. Trekking the World, pretty good journey. Richard Ostrowski says Trekking the World Ultimate Edition, then include an extra deck so you can play old or new rules. So there are a lot. There are other differences as well. The suitcases are completely different. For example, in first edition, the suitcases were just these little sort of like paperboard things. In this edition, the suitcases are double-layered cardboard with cutouts where you can slot in cubes. Also, for example, in this edition, every player has a compass that looks like a rose compass, which is like the most iconic kind of compass. And that rose compass is like a wheel where you keep track of the money that you've withdrawn from your bank account in order to fund your travels. So there's a lot of little different things like that, and there's so many different things that to put everything you need for both games in the box would make it much too expensive, and it wouldn't fit. It would require a very large box as well. So I don't think we can do that, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see here. Some other suggestions. Trekking the World, There and Back Again. I like that one. I'm a major Tolkien fan. I wonder if the Tolkien estate would sue us for that. But that's cool. I like that. Trekking the World, There and Back Again. I'll write that one down. Jacqueline Edmonds agrees. So you say, Jacqueline, you're more apt to buy standalone games or at least expansions that can be standalone. Right. That makes sense. I'm the same way. How about Trekking the World Return Ticket, says Philip Pryor. That's an interesting one. I like that. Return Ticket. Huh, okay. Brett Gruber says, I wish I could be of more help, but I haven't played it yet. No problem. Gary Huber, what are your thoughts on the board looking more detailed, like Ticket to Ride or the new Photo Tour game? The board just looks a bit outdated to me with regard to art. Sorry if this is off topic. Oh no, that's not off topic at all. That's like the kind of stuff we want to hear right now. Gary, could you sort of write down a little bit, if you're able to elaborate about what about it makes it look outdated? Like, is it more than just the fact that it's not as detailed as those other maps? Is it something about the style? Yeah, as much detail as you can provide would be really helpful, because it is something we might be able to look into. I'm not sure. Trekking the World Revised Edition, Julie LaFoon Jackson says. Okay, yeah, I think I already have that one on our list. It's not a bad idea. Deb Slaughter says, I haven't had a chance to look at the rules yet, but you look forward to it. I hope you like them. It's always really scary to make a new game because you spend so much time working on it. It's like giving birth to a baby and then handing the baby to somebody else to go survive on its own, you know. Photo Tour's board looks amazing. Yeah, I was looking at the Photo Tour campaign today, actually. actually. I saw the board looked really good. It has really sort of rich, varying color design. Its color design is a lot less uniform than Trekking the World's color design. Although, for me, I was looking at it, and there's always an open question about usability. Like, something can look great in a Kickstarter campaign, but then when you get it and start playing it, it can be a little bit like hard on the eyes or hard to use. So I'm not sure about whether Photo Tour will be good or bad in that regard yet. But I agree that it looks awesome. That whole game looks awesome. If you guys don't know about it, there's a game called Photo Tour, which on Kickstarter right now, I think it's about to end. That feels, or at least, I mean, I'm not going to vouch for it because I don't know if it's good or bad, and you can never, it's hard to know with Kickstarter campaigns. But it seems like it was made in the spirit of the games that we make, so it might be worth looking into. Paul Baker says, trekking parks with token and tents for 6 players so that 3 couples can play rather than only 5 players. Ah, interesting. Yeah, I don't think we have any current plans to go to 6. There's a problem with turn-based games where, like, the downtime can get really long after a while, and then you get this situation where, like, the people experience the game at high player counts with lots of downtime, and then they go give the game negative ratings online, and that can, like, hurt sales. So we try to limit the games to player counts where nobody will be upset with downtime. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never even tried playing Trekking the National Parks at 6 players, so I can't really vouch. Charlie would be able to speak more to that. So Charlie, if you want to put something into the comments about that, your opinion, that would be good. Oh, Gary, you're going to put together some comments about the quality of the Trekking the World board appearance. That would be great. Appreciate it. Deb Slaughter says, as a travel agent, I want to share the trekking games with my clients. Oh, yeah. I don't know if we've ever worked with travel agents before, but I do know that we get emails from people saying they've played the game and it made them want to travel somewhere, or it like affected their plans to travel somewhere. That goes both for Trekking the World and Trekking the National Parks. So it might work with your clients. I don't know, but we should talk about that. Maybe we can talk to each other privately later about that. I'd be really interested. Trekking the World 2, breaking the bank again. Yeah. It's a joke, but it's funny because in Trekking the World 2, money is actually represented in the game. So to go on tours, you need money. To take flights, you need money. But you never actually make money in the game. You just withdraw money from your bank account. So it feels a little bit like real travel that way. Charlie says the first edition of Trekking the National Parks did go to 6 players. After many tests, it felt like the balance capped out at 5 players. Still, it's possible that 6 could play without anything breaking, so who knows, maybe we do include 6th Trekker in the expansion, ? Oh, okay, so maybe it is a possibility. Rick Steves. I don't know who Rick Steves is. Oh, Charlie says he reduced it to 5 because it ensured a better balance. Charlie, what do you mean by balance? Jeremy Brooks says, saw the side-by-side comparisons of current and proposed new art for the trekking games. Is the thought just to make them more uniform, other than the trekking brand? Trekking Through History is so new, it doesn't really need new art, in your opinion. Yeah, so a big part of it was having consistent branding across the trekking games. One driving reason for that is our games are becoming popular, and we've had a bunch of international companies ask to localize the whole line to their home countries. And one criticism we've had from them is that we have this nice brand, this nice line, and then we have this game Trekking Through History that doesn't have the same branding as the other games. And for a lot of companies that's unacceptable. So that's one of the motivations. Another motivation is that there's definitely like a vocal contingent of people who didn't really like the trekking through history box cover. Um, I'm not one of them. I love that one, um, but I can relate to it. So I hope that the new one is acceptable to people. We'll find out. Um, cool. Oh, actually, Margaret Doss says she does play trekking the national parks with 6. Margaret, if there's any adjustments that you think need to be made to make it work the way you play it, please drop them in the comments so the other people who are interested can see. Philip Pryor says he teaches English as a second language. You're always looking for simple games that can be used in the classroom. Yeah. Um, as you all may or may not know, homeschoolers are like a group of people that keep our company afloat because our games are really popular with homeschoolers, and we'd like to keep it that way because learning and education is really important to us as individuals and as a group. And we think games are actually one of the best ways to learn. And I've seen that in my own life with my own kid. He'll learn things so much faster if he gets to experience them in a game than if I try to make him learn it in some more kind of rote way. So yeah, um, Jeremy Brooks says that's a tough problem to have. Our games are becoming popular. Yeah, it is. It's really awesome. It's cool. I love being a part of this company. I wish my colleagues could be on video too, so they could talk as well. I'm kind of speaking on behalf of all of them, and there's several of them that are even in this chat. Um, but yeah, this is so if I can just like speak personally for a minute, I've worked in the board game industry since 2014, and I've never been around a group of people like the people I work with here at Underdog, and I mean that. They're incredible. It's really cool. Um, cool. So let's see what else we have here. Uh, Aside from the solo mode being a separate download, I loved everything about trekking through history / time. Oh, that's good. Thank you. And sorry about making it a separate download. That was really our first foray into solo modes. We're going to be putting them in the box now that we understand we should. Um, so yeah, it took us a minute to figure that out. Apologies for that. Charlie says Nick is the man. That's true. I hope you're talking about this Nick. Um, Margaret Hayes Dawes says we don't make any adjustments. It just plays reasonably well. Okay, so Margaret, you play Trekking the National Parks at 6 players and not too much downtime, and you're okay with it. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. You have more experience doing that than I do, so take your word for it. Margaret also, by the way, is one of the most active, maybe the most active playtester that we have, so she plays a lot of our games. Richard Ostrowski says the first thing you notice about the game change is the movement. The old being random based on the use of one or more cards, versus itinerary cards this time. So focus on that aspect and maybe say touring the world. But the box artwork would say trekking the world with trekking crossed out and replaced with touring. Oh, that's interesting. Although I think we have to have it be named trekking for branding purposes, because, like I said, for example, our international partners, they want a trekking line where every game is trekking the blah blah blah. And I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I strongly believe if we told them we were going to call it touring the world, they would be like, no. So I don't know, but we can ask. Philip Pryor says, could you do a trekking through history with more international history? So sounds like Philip maybe felt like it wasn't international enough. The distribution of events in trekking through history wasn't international enough. Yeah, that may be the case. It was a really, both our history games, Trekking Through History and Her Story, posed a problem which were just extremely difficult, which is there are 8 billion historical events that one could consider to put in a game like that, and you can only put like 100 and change in, and for every event that we put in, there are 10, 15 that other people can immediately think of that they wish were in there instead. Um, yeah, so that's really tough. But yeah, it's possible it was the distribution of events was too skewed toward North America. I'm not sure, but yeah, thanks for the criticism. We'll take a look at that. Um, so Jeremy Brooks said, "Sorry, my questions are so heavily weighted on trekking through history. No problem." Um, Oh, hold on, I just lost. Okay, but I have not yet played Trekking the National Parks. Trekking the World has yet to hit my shelf. Some comments I've heard is that Trekking Through History may not appeal to the heavy gamer. It may not, but it's a great, welcoming game. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, so I could talk a little bit about this. All of our games we make explicitly so that it is at least possible to play them with non-gamers. But that, by the same token, often makes them less appealing to gamers through their simplicity. So we actually have a phrase for this problem. Ideally, we'd like to create a game that is completely awesome for non-gamers and also completely awesome for gamers. But it's such a hard challenge, like I don't think we or anyone else has done it perfectly yet. But in my opinion, the hardest mechanical, like gameplay problem that we try to solve at our company, and it is viciously difficult. Um, yeah, it's so hard. I recently played a game called Sky Team, which does it really well, which has really inspired me. It's a scenario-based game with a lot of scenarios. In this game, it's a cooperative two-player game where you and your partner are trying to land a plane together, and each scenario is landing the plane at a different airport. And the early scenarios are very simple. You're landing at airports where it's really easy to land. I haven't gotten to the end yet, but I assume the last scenarios are like landing on a mountain with the wings having fallen off and the plane's on fire. But the way that that game scales the scenarios is very beautiful, and you can definitely play the low-end scenarios with a total non-gamer and have a great time, and then play the higher-end scenarios with a gamer and also have a great time. So that's sort of, for me, the gold standard for solving this problem. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, trekking is our hook. Any plans for a trekking through space theme? Yes! So, Trekking the Cosmos has been our sort of internal name for it. We have tried designing this game more times than I care to admit. I think by now we probably have 60 distinct prototypes. We have not figured out how to do it really well. It's a very hard game to design for a couple of different reasons. First is that representing space in any kind of comprehensible way on the table is really hard. Like, when we design trekking the national parks, you can plop a map of the United States on the table, and immediately the players are all oriented. Everybody knows where they are and where everything is. Space is not like that, except in the solar system. So that is maybe sort of a clue. And there are also lots of different expectations about what a game about space should be, and figuring out how to satisfy all those expectations at once is really hard. So, for example, we know that our homeschooler customers really would like a game about the solar system that's about just the stuff we know a lot about and that we can like teach our kids. And then there's a whole other contingent of people who want to head out into deep space and be exposed to like speculative ideas about what we might find out there, like, civilizations high up on the Kardashev scale or something like that. So given that, we have done some more thinking about it recently. I don't know if you all saw, but there was a question in the advisor group where we asked, Like, would you prefer if we made trekking the solar system or trekking the universe? And we got a whole variety of answers. The preferences were all over the place, but it made us think what we really need to do is create a series of like 3 games. This is the idea now. I don't know if it's good or bad, but here's the idea. So it will be a line of 3 games. The line will be called Trekking the Cosmos. The first game will be called Trekking the Cosmos Solar System. The second will be Trekking the Cosmos Milky Way. And the third will be Trekking the Cosmos Beyond. Each of these games will be a cooperative game uh, that is also a scenario-based game, like that Sky Team game I just mentioned. Uh, each scenario would be a mission to a different real location. In Trekking the Cosmos Solar System, all those missions would be very sort of factual and buttoned up and would teach you about all the known stuff about those places that you visited. But with each successive game, the game would become more speculative until, once we get out Trekking the Cosmos Beyond, maybe you can discover life. Maybe the game ends when you discover intelligent life or something like that. That's kind of the idea we have right now. That was a mouthful. So let's see here. Julie LaFoon Jackson says, on the new edition of Trekking the World, please write the numbers 1, 2, 3 on the itinerary cards. Julie, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I wonder if you could elaborate in a comment. Brody Lee suggests the game Trekking the Rhine Valley. I do think, or at least Hassan, our fearless leader in the company, the CEO of the company, has suggested that now that we have international partners, we should make Trekking Germany, Trekking France, Trekking Japan, Trekking China. That's definitely a possibility that's on the books. We don't know if we're going to do it yet, but we're strongly looking at it. Okay, so Jeremy Brooks says, I've played at least a dozen. It is skewed to the Western world, but I find world history pretty well represented. Yeah, it's skewed a little bit to the Western world, referring to trekking through history. I think that's about accurate. Charlie Bink says, Margaret Hayes Doss and others, if we do add a 6th meeple color in the expansion box, what color would you want? Reply in the comments to Charlie. Charlie will be deciding the colors. Oh, wow. These comments are really rolling in here. Hold on. Give me one moment. Okay. Aaron Butler says, just want to let you know that I introduced my teen son and his 3 friends to Trekking Through History 2 nights ago. A few minutes after I got them going, I literally overheard, you don't know what apartheid is? And a 5-minute conversation ensued. That is fantastic. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a weird thing about Trekking Through History where when the educational side of it works, it slows down the game like crazy. So, congratulations and apologies. Let's see here. Patrick Connolly said, one thing I really liked about the original Trekking the World was the multi-use cards forcing tactical decisions on how to use the cards. The itinerary cards in the new version do multiple things, but all of them, so there is no choice other than which card to pick. Well, yes, that's true, but there is also a choice about how you use the resources that you get out of them. And if we've designed the game correctly, I think you'll be satisfied. So, one of the common refrains we hear from playtesters is that they feel 2nd edition, or whatever we're going to call it, has more going on strategically and tactically than 1st edition. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we've heard a lot of people who feel that way. So hopefully you will as well. And if you don't, I apologize. All right, let's see here. For an Inception-type moment commemorating Bill and Ted's excellent adventure with a date card would crash the multiverse, says Jeremy Brooks. Yeah, I remember when we were first conceiving of the game, a lot of people referenced Bill and Ted's excellent adventure as like something that like illustrated their love for time travel. That would be really cool to put something in there about that. Um, Vincent Peony says, "The older I get, the less complicated I like my games to be." I feel that. Could Cindy Jones asks, could expansion packs work for trekking through history with other areas? Haven't unwrapped ours yet. Yes, we've talked about that. There is an issue that could arise. So the math of the game is a little tricky, and if the dates are too dense in the decks, it could cause problems. So one way to fix this is to make an expansion where you just swap out the decks for another set of decks, and then you wouldn't be allowed to have any mixing. That's a possibility. Um, I think, Charlie, I think you have opinions about that. You can leave them in the comments. Yeah, that's been something that's sort of like we've tossed the idea around a lot, and I don't think we've ever come to a conclusion about whether we should do it or not. Kelly Joe Soder. I hope one of those is right. I love heavy games, but I enjoyed Trekking Through History. It's a nice game to play in between heavy games. Trekking Through History is on my wish list. Oh, okay, that's great. I like that. That's thank you, Kelly. That is a use that that even heavy gamers can have with our light games. Richard Ostrowski says, yes, that and the fact that you can jump over a player takes away some strategy. Yeah, so there's certain ways. We're talking about Trekking the World, the new edition now. Yeah, so there are some things that we changed or removed, but we've tried also to be careful to add things so that on balance things are at least as strategic or more so. So, for example, the encounter powers adds a lot of decisions that weren't there in the original edition. So hopefully you'll find the balance satisfying. But if you don't, just let us know and we'll learn something. And yeah, I definitely, I recommend to everybody, if you can, try before you buy, because we really don't want people buying things that will dissatisfy them. Like, our goal in life is to have satisfied customers, and if we make something that you will be dissatisfied by, we don't want you spending your money on it. So anything we can do to help you make that decision is also something we want to do. So hopefully for Trekking the World 2nd edition, we can have some playthroughs, some video playthroughs or some live playthroughs where people can watch us play and hear about the kinds of thinking and decisions that go into the turns. Maybe something like that would help. That's something we haven't done probably enough of prior to releasing a game in the past, but something that's probably necessary, given that I'm sure there will be uncertainty. I mean, there's uncertainty around every game that a company publishes, but for Trekking the World, there's probably an extra measure of it, because there will be a question of, like, should I hold on to 1st edition? Should I go out of my way to get 2nd edition? That kind of a thing. Julie LaFoon Jackson says, Santa's Workshop 2nd edition has 2 rule books and a double-sided board, one family weight, and the other for people who like heavier games. Maybe you could do that with Trekking the World. Yeah, we've talked about the possibility of including like a family version and a like sort of standard version. Actually, our big worry is that this new edition is the decisions are a little bit too gamery, or a little bit too complex. One of the things that we hear repeatedly is that although the game is easy to learn, the decisions can feel complicated. And we have wondered if we made them a little too complicated. A family version with some of the rules stripped away maybe could help with that. I'm not sure. Yeah, right now the consensus in our company seems to be that we should only have one version. One thing that helps it is that it's very easy to teach. It takes me about 4.5 minutes to teach second edition. So, like, you don't use up a lot of your cognitive load just trying to learn the game. So you have sort of a lot of like cognitive slack left over to actually play it. And I think that might be one of the reasons why the consensus, at least in the company, is that we should just have this one version. But it's still a little bit up in the air, and we're open to your criticisms or if you know, if especially if you've been in one of the play tests and you have an opinion about it, I'd like to hear it. It is very hard to convey what a game is like just via the rules, because games have emergent qualities that don't always show up in the rules. So yeah, especially those of you who have playtested, I would love to hear if you think there needs to be a family version in the rulebook. Let's see here. Trekking Through the Trench Deep Sea Edition, Thomas Dittel suggests. Yeah, we have the only other, I think, trekking game that we have as a possibility right now besides space is an ocean one. And we actually have a couple of prototypes for an ocean one, but those prototypes that we've made so far suck. So it will be a while before we make it, I think. Margaret Hayes Doss says, I like heavier strategy games that take longer, but sometimes it's fun to play a shorter, lighter strategy game. Yeah, I'm kind of like that too. Ticket to Ride has Rails to Sails with a double-sided board. And that's like, oh, so Alexandra, you said you really like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I agree. Double-sided boards are really wonderful. Margaret says to Thomas, or even trekking the ocean with deep trenches a part of it. Yeah. Jeremy Brooks says, I really like the idea of trekking through the oceans. I bet the game would be beautiful. Yeah, I actually, I love the ocean, and I was a designer on a game called Oceans, which is a much heavier game for gamers by North Star Games, and one of the things in making that game that I really came to impress me was how great the visuals can be, because there are so many things in the ocean, so many creatures in the ocean, which are both like very strange and alien looking and also beautiful. So there's like a mysterious beauty that you can represent in a game about the ocean that is a little bit harder to represent in games about terrestrial life. Alexandra Starr says, nah, strategy is better for Cosmos. Too much like Pandemic. I think that game is boring. Wait, which game do you think is boring, Alexandra? Leave it in the comments. Okay, let's see here. Oh wow, so many comments. Okay, oh, Hassan is in here too. Everybody, Hassan is the owner of Underdog Games, and he's got a lot of opinions, so watch the comments for whatever he's saying. Hassan, I wish I could have you on video here too. Let's see here. Hassan says, would you all see it as a game about exploring actual places in the ocean, or more of a sea creatures style game? That's a good question. I hope you don't do limited communication for the Cosmos games, says Brett. Right, yeah. So I assume you're making that comment in reply to the suggestion that these could be a cooperative games. And for those that you who don't know, cooperative games often have limited limits on communication to solve what's called the quarterbacking problem, which is if you have one person in the game who understands the strategy of the game better than the other players, they can act like a quarterback and just kind of like tell everybody what to do, and that makes it not fun for others. Yeah, I've actually spent a lot of time talking with other designers lately about how to try to solve this quarterbacking problem without strict communication limits, because I agree, like, one of the great strengths of tabletop games is their social nature, and communication limits interferes with that. So, suffice it to say, we don't know how to solve the problem now, but oh wow, we really want to, and we're thinking about it a lot. Deb Slaughter says, what about trekking the UNESCO sites? Oh, interesting. I don't know much about those. Quarterbacking. I guess maybe somebody. Maybe one of my colleagues who knows more about those could comment about that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an opinion because I don't know much about them. Trekking state parks. Oh, that's interesting. Jerry Witt said that. Julie LaFoon Jackson said players have to do the 3 actions in order that are written on the itinerary cards, correct? Correct. If that's the case, add the numbers 1, 2, 3 to indicate that these are the steps 1, 2, 3. That's an interesting point. Yeah, I'll make a note of that. Maybe we should do that. Got it. Okay, Deb Slaughter says that's the point of a game that can get people talking. I assume you're referring to the communication limits that we were talking about before. Some more discussion here about the oceans, sea creatures versus places. Margaret Hayes Doss suggests we should consider both. Others are agreeing. Trekking the World: The Next Journey as a possible name for Trekking the World instead of second edition. Does that suggest that there would be new locations in the game? Because if there would, that we probably couldn't name it that because the locations are the same. I don't know. Charlie Bing says, regarding Trekking Through History, swapping out decks is a safer way to maintain the balance of icons that come up. Adding more cards to existing decks can create floods and droughts of some icons. Right. Yeah, so that's the tricky thing for combining decks if we're going to expand Trekking Through History. Vincent says, as a critic, I interview/playtest with devs a lot on Tabletop Simulator and use OBS to record video for them. If you need help with that, feel free to reach out. Yeah, I might reach out. Thanks. That's cool. Alexandra Starr asks, can you make a junior level game and then an over 12 one? Yeah, that's a maybe.
And it was around this point in the video where Facebook kind of cut us off. We lost audio and just called it at that point. But hopefully this gave you a small taste as to what you're in for should you decide to, check out Underdog games in the future. As you can see, they have a history of creating semi-light family board games. I love Trekking Through History. It's one of my favorite games. There's a solo mode for it as well. I really enjoy that. You do have to download that separately, but that's already been discussed in the video. Just keep an eye out for some of their new games that they're coming out with. I'm pretty excited for them. Well, this is Vince. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Take care.